Data lists are a great way of managing tables of data without needing to set up your own external database server. So in this case we've got our resources tab selected. This is where you upload and manage your data lists. So let's create a new one, and we can create an empty list, in which case we configure and edit the contents in only here. Or we could upload one, select a file from our desktop for instance, upload it, and we have to tell it that it's a data list type, and we can then configure various other parameters. Once a list is loaded, you can then press edit content and edit it directly in the console. So it's very suitable for for small lists. For instance, if you want to manage your list content in the console, you can do so here without having to then go into your app each time if you want to add new items into your list. So it's a much cleaner way of managing list data. And as we'll see in a minute, you just point your widgets to the data list. You can also manage very large lists of data. So here we've got a products catalog which has got 10 or 20,000 items in it. So once you've created your data list, the next thing is how do you expose that to your apps? That's very straightforward. If you're familiar with data integration, it's the same as accessing any other form of data. You set up a query. So if we go new, I'm going to set up a new query now and click on edit. You can see we've got connections, that's for accessing external databases, apps for application craft, app data, and lists. This is where we've got our data lists displayed. So I would now select, for instance, staff, add that to the right column. We're not doing any joining. Input fields, so which fields I want to be able to filter on. Output fields, which ones are returned to the app. And then we've got a data preview. So that's all very straightforward. Now, once your query is set up, let's go and take a look at how your app actually references that data. So I've got here an app open. The first thing that we're going to do here is just take a look and see what this looks like when it's running. So I'll put it into preview mode, type something, and here we've got the product list come back. So this is populated from that products table of 10 or 20,000 items. Note the formatting in here and the fact that we can select something, and then it would go on and we'd actually be able to order this item. So the first thing you do in your app is to select the app properties and then the data views property here. And this allows us to add in or reference any queries that we want, that we've got permission to access. So here we've got a query, that's an app data query, and this is the products data list. So having configured those at the app level, we now come to our widget and we go down to the data section, and you can see we've selected the products view. Next up is the fields, and here we're mapping, you can see two fields from our data list, the 0th and the 1st, are being mapped in to the actual HTML string that populates the list item. In this case we're also taking the product code and populating the value property, which you don't see but it's associated with each individual item. That's really it, and that's all it takes to configure this. So it's a completely code-free way of doing that. We can also, here we're setting up filtering. There's a filter product, the filter property, so we're telling it to look for whatever we've typed into that search field here within the field. The other way that you can have your app load data lists is using an API call. The sys.getListResource method allows you to retrieve data from, this is the resource ID, we'll see how to get that in a minute, and then when it's retrieved it calls a callback function where you can process that list data. So if I go back to the console, to the resources, there you can see we just copy and paste that into our code. So hopefully that gives you a good understanding of data lists.